Hello, welcome back to Nick's Keto Kitchen, and I'm here again with another fall favorite of mine. And this time we're going to be making a pumpkin roll. This is something I actually never had until last year for the first time, when one of my coworkers and his family made and distributed it to us at work. And I immediately fell in love with it, and I immediately knew that I needed to find a way of making it keto friendly. So I scoured the internet and I found myself a recipe. Actually, two different recipes to make it just perfect. So I'll put a link to both recipes down below, but one I'll be using for the cake part and one I'll be using for the filling. And I'll tell you why as we go here. So let's get started on this. So we're going to start out with the cake, naturally. And we got our ingredients here. So let's start with our dry ingredients. So let's start out with a cup of almond flour. Like I said in the past, I like to use a combination of almond and coconut flour, and I look for recipes that use both of those to have the best consistency for that. So, 1 cup of almond flour here and 3 tablespoons of coconut flour. Now, remember, coconut flour, it's important that you measure precisely because it absorbs liquids so readily. If you use too much, you can very much throw off your recipe. All right, now we're going to get a teaspoon and a half of baking powder. Tablespoon and a half might also throw off your recipe. Teaspoon of xanthan gum. If you do a lot of keto baking and cooking, this is a great thickener. Very, very strong though, so once again, measure exactly, but always have it on hand. I'm going to use a teaspoon of cinnamon. It wouldn't be pumpkin without a little bit of cinnamon in there. And again, I always go a little bit heavy on the cinnamon there. And half a teaspoon of ground ginger. And 1/8 a teaspoon of salt, or a nice fat pinch there. We're just gonna whisk those together there and set that aside. Okay, now we're going to move on to the beginning of our wet ingredients, and we're actually going to have a couple of different wet ingredients here. So we're going to start with 4 egg yolks. So we're using 4 eggs separated here. So this is just the yolks, and we're going to use a 1/4 cup of sweetener. I like to use a monk fruit sweetener. It's a monk fruit erythritol blend, but it measures the same as sugar. That's the important thing here. Whatever you like, as long as it measures the same. Okay, we're going to use an electric mixer, and we're just going to beat these egg yolks until they are pale and a little bit thicker. So we're going to use an electric mixer with whisk attachments. We're just going to beat these egg yolks until they become a bit paler and thicker with that sweetener in there. Now, once you get those all beaten well, they thickened up a bit, they're pale, we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of pumpkin puree and a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And we're going to beat those together. Once that's all integrated, we're going to set this bowl aside. We're going to make sure we have clean whisks for our beater, for our egg whites now. So we're going to take the same 4 eggs, but this time egg whites, and we're going to beat these on high with the whisks until soft peaks form. Once we beat this to soft peaks, we're going to add half a cup of our sweetener, and then beat until stiff peaks form. Once we got our stiff peaks, we're going to take our egg yolk mixture and we're going to fold that into the egg whites here. Now, as you might suspect, using egg whites beaten like this is going to make for a very light and fluffy cake, which is exactly what we want here. Once that's well folded in, then we're going to take our almond flour mixture and we're going to fold that right in as well. Once we have all our ingredients mixed together, we're going to get our prepared 11 by 17 inch pan, and we're going to prepare this by putting a piece of parchment on there and greasing it well. I used a coconut oil spray. Use whatever you want. It won't make too big of a difference at this point. We're just going to take our mixture and we're going to lay it out evenly here. And it's going to be very thin, but that's what we want because this will be a roll, remember. We're going to roll it up here after it bakes. Now, once we have this all spread thin, and it is going to be very thin and even, we're going to throw this in our oven that's been preheated to 350 degrees to 15 to 18 minutes. And it'll be just slightly golden brown when it comes out. While we're waiting for our cake to bake, we're going to go ahead and make our filling. So we're going to start out with 8 ounces of cream cheese that's been left to sit out to room temperature. And take our electric mixer with beaters on and beat this till it's fluffy. Now once this is good and beaten to a pulp, we're going to add 3/4 cup of heavy whipping cream, half teaspoon of vanilla, and an 1/8 teaspoon of liquid stevia. Now, I'm not a big fan of the taste of stevia, but when you use the pure stuff in very small quantities, you won't be able to notice. So, there we go. Now we're going to beat this till it's smooth. Once it's nice and smooth, we're just going to give it a quick little taste to make sure it's the proper sweetness, which it tastes good to me. We're going to set this aside and wait for our cake. Okay, now our cake has cooled down. It's not cold, but it's cooler, and it's a little more dense than it was before. So we're going to now take it out of its pan, and we're going to flip it over and let it cool a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to take another piece of parchment paper. We're going to set this over the cake. I'm going to use the back side of another pan. I'm going to flip it over. You can use a large cutting board or any big flat surface for this. There we go. Pops out nice and clean out of the pan. We're going to peel that parchment off gently. Now if you have it all greased well, it should just come right off. We're going to set that back on there. We're just going to let it cool a little bit more from here. Having it out of that pan will help it cool just a little bit more, and we're going to get prepared to roll this into our pumpkin roll. Now the goal here is to have the cake cool, but not cold. We want it warm enough that it's still pliable, it's going to move without cracking, but not too warm that it's going to melt our icing. So I feel like we've got it right at that temperature. We're going to go ahead and get this ready. We're going to take our filling, and we're just going to evenly spread this over our cake surface, and then we're going to roll. Now be careful when doing this. The filling is fairly thick and the cake is thin and fairly fragile. Okay, now that we have a nice even coating, we're going to roll this up. So we're going to use the short side. We're going to use this parchment paper as our guide here. We're going to fold it over. Now this first layer may crack a bit. It's going to happen as it gets larger. Hopefully it cracks less. But I promise you, if it cracks, it's still going to taste just as good. And there we go. There's our pumpkin roll. Now, if you were to cut this up right now and eat it, it'd be delicious. But to make it a little bit easier on yourself, just take it, roll it up in your parchment, and pop this in the freezer. It'll firm up nicely, it'll cut nicely. Then you can just let it thaw for 15 to 20 minutes before serving. Dust it with a little bit of powdered sweetener for a nice aesthetic, and then you have yourself a great fall holiday treat. Now I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you enjoyed this recipe. If you have any comments, let me know. If you try it out and you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know. Of course, credit goes to the two websites that I've got this recipe from, one for the cake, one for the filling. Please visit them, check out all the recipes they have to offer. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much.